Oh, hello there. Yes, well, safely into the weekend. Hooray. Now, people often come up to me and say, is it true that people often come up to you? And the answer is no, they don't. They try and keep away most of the time. Anyway, as a rhetorical device, it's quite useful, but it's that thing about, yes, why don't you make videos about things that are decidedly happening at the time? Well, you know, the whole Bannon and Musk and Trump and all that stuff that was going on, Zia Youssef, I mean, it's just an ongoing story, and by the time you've done anything about it, it's completely out of date. So what I tend to do is wait and see about the dust settling. So whatever's going on with that lot, I don't care. Yeah, reform coming third. I don't care, even though it's quite funny. We're going to talk about D-Day today, because it was D-Day yesterday. Yeah, you see how, well, behind the times I am. Such is the old man in me. Anyway, yeah, D-Day. So all the usual suspects were out in force, saying about how glorious it was that our, well, in your case, probably grandparents, in my case, parents, and in most people's cases, great-grandparents, stormed the beaches of Normandy, etc., etc., freedom, etc., etc., etc. I always think that they were storming the beaches of Normandy to, well, stop fascism. They were kind of anti-fascists, weren't they? Yes. But it does allow the usual suspects, indeed, to project forwards, doesn't it? And apparently the young men storming the beaches of Sword, Juneau or Gold, or whichever it might be, or if you're American, Omaha and Utah. See, I do know my stuff. I do know my history. I was taught that in school, like everybody bleeding is, even though certain suspects don't want you to believe that. Anyway, those people, of course, in a year's time would vote Churchill out of office and install, well, a radical leftist wokist government, wouldn't they? Yes. Yeah, still we don't mention that. We just pretend that they were storming the beaches of Normandy because they didn't want people to wear the burqa. Now, yesterday again, there was that ongoing thing about the whole Britain isn't racist, and there was no way that various racist people were going to be racist because Britain just isn't racist. But it strikes me that there are a number of very, very, very nasty stories and discussions that people seem to be having at the moment about burqas and halal meat and well, just generally people whose religion ends in lamb. Yes, the idea that we should keep certain people out. Badenoch was at it yesterday, desperately trying to make herself relevant in the way that nobody else can possibly try. But anyway, yeah, suggesting that we need to ban people from certain countries. But that then got me thinking, you see, I tend to join dots about these things, about things like D-Day, because very large numbers of troops in the British Army in the Second World War, particularly in the Far East, as you might expect, were Indian. Yes, and they were fighting alongside us. Lots of those soldiers that went ashore at D-Day, if they'd been out in the Western Desert, would have become very, very used to dealing with what we might have called Dominion troops. The Indians, the South Africans, the Australians, the New Zealanders, that great commonwealth of nations that was the British Empire. Hooray, yes, you can cheer certain bits of it if you like. But those people got a very good sense of what it was to deal with people from other cultures, and they weren't really threatened by it. Certainly people like my father were like that. It gave them a vast experience. My dad used to like being attached to Indian Army units because their food was generally much, much better. Yeah, it wasn't bully beef and biscuits. Yeah. But Badenoch calling for certain people to be banned from certain countries got me thinking about, you know, the past and wars in the past, or indeed not that past, you know, realistically what amounts to months ago. All those people that were left behind in Afghanistan that nobody mentions anything about at all, some of whom come here on boats because, you know, we just decided to throw them to the wolves, didn't we? Yes. Now, you can accuse me of being a woke, radical, leftist, pro-Hamas person, but I know dodgy regimes when I see them, and the Taliban was certainly one. And you may recall, those of you with a dim, distant view of history, that just after Afghanistan fell, loads and loads of people were insisting that we would take all of those Afghans that had been working for us out there because it was very important. And that lasted for exactly about 19 and a half seconds, as far as I could make out, and now we just don't want to know. So instead of opening up routes for these people to come to us to avoid persecution, we have decided to just shut down absolutely everything. one of the non-discussions that there isn't all the time on the British media. Still, let's talk about face coverings, shall we? Yeah, let's talk about oppressive regimes and and religions, shall we? Or not, as the case may be. Let's just label a group of people, because after all, you can't be racist if you're talking about Muslims, can you? But you can be racist if you're talking about Jews, apparently. Don't really understand that. And if we're talking about barbaric medieval practices, can I raise the tricky issue of headwear in lots of Catholic sects? And the answer is no, you can't, because that doesn't count. Anyway, do have a glorious weekend. Remember what your forefathers fought for. It wasn't what they tell you. Okay? You can go back and read social history. There's a lot of it about the Second World War. It doesn't conform to Ben Habib, or Lawrence Fox, or any of them on GB News, and what they pretend. Okay? History isn't like that. And they don't actually read anything about it. No, not even Rafe Hadel Mancu, that fine Englishman. What a great name that is, isn't it? Historian that he is. Or just purveyor of myths that are politically convenient at the time. Ooh, that was brutal, wasn't it? Not really, no. Anyway, do have a glorious one. Avoid the rain. Damp, innit?